Hello, I'm Liz Hill. Welcome to Podsnappery, the willful determination to ignore the objectionable or inconvenient, at the same time assuming airs of superior virtue and noble resignation. We explore things I find interesting, unusual, or annoying. So let's get down to it and spill the tea. Fairy tales. We all grew up with them, but what do we really know about them? Were they true? Are the Disney versions an accurate depiction of the original telling?
No!
You're not wrong. In my opinion, fairy tales are, as Winston Churchill once said, a terminological inexactitude. Churchill first used this term, terminological inexactitude, in a common speech in 1906, and trust me, it was strictly literal. A long-winded way of referring to an inexact or inaccurate terminology. You know, a lie. I hope to occasionally dish on some of these childhood fables, and I want to start with one we all are very familiar with, Beeping Slooty. I mean Sleeping Beauty. The origins of this story go back, I mean way back. Not the 1812 Brothers Grimm version, called Little Briar Rose. No, centuries before that. The 17th century, to be exact. And trust me, it was not a pleasant tale.
What?
I know, right? Whether you've seen the Disney film or even read the Brothers Grimm rendition of it, and no matter how cringe it is for Prince Philip or the king's son to fall in love with a teenager who's in a coma, nothing compares to the original story. It was written by Giambattista Basile in 1634, and the title is Sun, Moon, and Talia. It reads like this, with a limerick-like beginning. There once was a lord and his wife who desperately wanted a child. After years of trying, they finally managed to conceive. On the birth of their daughter Talia, the Lord called in wise men and astronomers to foretell what Talia's life would hold. They warned the Lord that Talia would be poisoned by a flax splinter from a spinning wheel. On hearing this, the Lord banned flax and/or spinning wheels from his land, in the hope that this would keep his beloved daughter safe. Like that ever works. Oedipus, table for two. Once again, mortals trying to intervene with the fates.
Destiny! Destiny! No escaping, that's for me! Destiny! Destiny! No escaping, that's for me! Destiny! Destiny! No escaping! No.
Talia grew into a beautiful young woman. One day, just before her 16th birthday, she was looking out of the window, and she saw an old woman spinning. She had never seen a spinning wheel or a distaff, the stick that is used to wind the wool or flax onto, and ran down to see what the old woman was doing. Taking the distaff from the woman, Talia began to stretch out the material on the distaff. Unbeknown to the woman, who was a traveler, the material was flax. See where this is going? As Talia stretched the flax, a splinter of it slipped under her fingernail, and she instantly fell to the floor, dead. Then again, maybe she was asleep or in a coma. But the original story described her as dead.
I'm not dead!
Yeah, that makes this whole story a bit of a fucking disaster. So let's just stick with asleep. The woman, naturally scared, ran as fast as she could.
Run away! Run away!
Talia was found by her father, and after many tears were shed, he placed his lifeless daughter's body in one of the rooms of his house, like you do, and then sealed the house up and left, as he could not bear to live in this house without his daughter.
Should have been out there sailing with us today, Bertie. Sun was fabulous, wind was fabulous, we had a great time. Oh, hi, guys.
I guess out of sight, out of mind? Anyway, sometime later, a king was hunting in the area of the house, when one of his falcons flew off and into the window. The falcon didn't return when called, so the king knocked on the door of the house. When there was no answer, he called upon his men to bring him a ladder so he could enter the house through the same window that the falcon flew. Climbing into the house, the king decided to check every room and came across Talia. Instantly, the king was struck with how beautiful she was, and well, if you think he's going to kiss her and wake her up, I hate to disappoint you. Instead, the king...
All right, we did the horizontal mambo. We danced it. It was the greatest sex I ever had in my life.
Yes, he found an unconscious young woman who could have been dead for all he knew and chose to drop trow and just go for it. The asshole. Now, when he was finished, he found his falcon and left. That jerk. Returning to his realm, he had much business to attend to, so thoughts of Talia drifted from his mind. 9 months later, Talia gave birth to twins. I'm gonna stop here for a minute because this is just too fucking insane. I mean, how the fuck? Just the logistics alone are crazy. How did she remain pregnant during a coma with no food or water? Let alone how did she deliver twins all by herself while unconscious? But wait, there's more. 2 fairies appeared to look after the twins, while Talia remained unconscious. You think they could have given her a drink or something to eat?
Do they still have sandwiches there?
The fairies tried to get the twins to breastfeed, but accidentally got one of the children to latch onto Talia's finger. As the child suckled the finger, the flax splinter came out and Talia awoke. Now, you or I might wake up and wonder what the hell was going on and who the fuck are these kids? But not Talia. She looked upon her children and felt that they were the most precious things that she had ever seen and named the children Sun and Moon. Wow, how Zappa-esque. She found food and drink on a nearby table that the fairies had laid out for her, but she never saw her guardians. As time passed, the king's thoughts turned to Talia, and he decided he wanted to go hunting again. I guess that's what they called it back then. Finding the house again, he entered, expecting to find the lifeless girl, but instead finds her nursing 2 children. The king explained what happened to Talia, and she accepted what had happened. Holy hell, just like that? I think it's a stretch, but hey, fairy tale, right? Maybe the extra long sleep helped her resilience to openly accept life-changing news. Maybe suddenly becoming alive and a mother changes your outlook.
Don't you believe it?
Either way, the story tells that Talia declared her love for the king, and the king, who had been taken with Talia, reciprocated. The king, however, had his own secrets, and in this case, it was a doozy. You see, he was already married to a woman named, ready for this? Maleficent.
Oh dear. What an awkward situation.
The king, therefore, kept Talia in her house, but adorned her with gifts and servants to make her life with his children the most comfortable that it could be. The king would visit Talia often, but Maleficent soon realized that something was amiss. Her husband was more absent than usual, and some of her servants had gone missing. One day she cornered one of the king's footmen and asked him where the king goes when they leave the palace. At first the footman refused to answer, but when Maleficent said, "If you do not tell me, no one will ever find you alive or dead," the footman explained all about Talia. Narc.
Can we in fact pretend that she is anything other than a woman scorned like which fury hell hath no?
Right? So rather than looking at the king's questionable behavior, Maleficent demanded that Talia's children be brought to the palace, but under the guise that the king had sent for them. Talia obviously let them go with the king's men willingly. When the children arrived at the palace, Maleficent ordered them to be sent down to the kitchen and be cooked into a great feast. Wow, so now we're looking a lot like a Greek tragedy.
Now fuck off, I'm full.
Luckily for all concerned, the cook simply couldn't kill the children, so prepared lamb in their place, and hid Sun and Moon at his own house with his wife. Later, the feast was served to the king, and every time he complimented the food, Maleficent would retort, "Eat, eat as you are eating your own." After a few times of Maleficent saying this, the king got angry and retaliated. I know very well I eat my own, thinking he was eating food from his land, for you have brought nothing to this house, and he angrily stormed off to seek solace. Maleficent, still not happy despite the thought that she had just fed the king, his own children, asked one of the king's footmen to go and get Talia, again with a message that the king longed for her company. On hearing this, Talia rushed to the palace as she was so desperate to see her beloved. When she arrived at the palace, instead of being met by the king, Maleficent stood in front of her, having a conniption. Red-faced in anger, she hurled a tirade of insults at Talia. Welcome, Madam Busybody. You are a fine piece of goods, you ill weed, who are enjoying my husband. So you are the lump of filth, the cruel bitch that has caused my head to spin? Change your ways, for you are welcome in purgatory, where I will compensate you for all the damage you have done to me. Okay, interesting tirade, but I digress. Talia tried to excuse herself and was trying to explain to Maleficent that it wasn't her fault, as the king had, ready for this, taken ownership of territory while she was asleep. Yeah, that's a polite way of saying, your husband raped me while I was unconscious. But Maleficent was having none of it. She ordered her servants to build a large fire in the courtyard, and she was set to throw Talia on it. Talia asked Maleficent if she could remove her clothes before being thrown on the fire. As Talia's dress was an extravagant garment embroidered in gold and dripping in pearls, she agreed. I mean, fair. Maleficent was probably thinking she could get a new dress as well as her vengeance. As Talia removed each layer of clothing, she gave out a scream. As she removed the last of her apparel, she let out a louder scream than her previous. As Talia was dragged towards the fire, the king burst into the courtyard, demanding that the servants stop what they were doing and his children be brought to him. Maleficent laughed, proclaiming that he had eaten his children for dinner. This sent the king into a tailspin. He was in disbelief that he didn't realize that he was eating his children, and sadness and anger took over. He demanded that Maleficent be thrown on the fire, as well as the footman and the cook. The cook, watching the other two screaming in the blaze, threw himself at the king's feet, quickly explaining that he could not kill the children, and that he had hidden them with his wife. The wife, hearing the shouts of the cook, rushed the children into the courtyard, and the king, now overwhelmed with love, hugged Sun, Moon, and Talia. He made the cook a chamberlain of the kingdom and rewarded him handsomely for his actions.
Thanks, pal.
The king married Talia, and they lived a long and happy life. And the moral of the story is that, for those who fortune favors, they will find luck even in their sleep. Yeah, right. I doubt that any of this was luck or fortune. I mean, come on. This is a story about a woman whose father couldn't be bothered to find a doctor, a king who has necrophilic tendencies and indulges in sexual activity with a non-compliant partner, rapist, a woman scorned who has murderous designs, and two children who are brought up by a mother who seems to just be very accepting of whatever the fuck happens. Full disclaimer, I don't need to tell you that rape is a crime, but I'm going to. Emphatically. Now, it is very obvious to me, and should be for you as well, why this story transformed into a prince waking Sleeping Beauty with a kiss, rather than a misplaced breastfeeding child. One could assume that Talia does eventually find her voice, while screaming to get the attention of the king. But therein lies the issue. This was written by a man with a very patriarchal point of view. Screaming for a man to come save her? Really? So no. I'm not going to assume that. I'm not going to fucking roll over and accept these bizarre occurrences like Talia did.
How bizarre! How bizarre! How bizarre!
Overall, this story reads more like a statement of how the life of women was seen in the 1600s, or in a 2024 commencement speech given by an NFL kicker who should have been living in the 1600s, rather than a moral story that we need to live by today. But even for that time, this is still a deeply disturbing story. If this story, or that of Sleeping Beauty generally, can teach all you ladies out there anything today, it would be to challenge everything and not accept a situation for what it is just because you find yourself stuck in it. Don't let the patriarchy pit us against each other. Besides, I'm betting that it's his fault and not his side chick. So let the wrath out on the correct target.
Snap out of it!
So, the willful determination to ignore the objectionable or inconvenient, at the same time assuming airs of superior virtue and noble resignation. That, my friends, is Podsnappery. Thanks for watching. I'm Liz Hill. Remember, no means no. Enthusiastic consent is sexy, and I will always choose a bear over a man.